My name is Rachel Hannah Cohen, and the information I'm about to share will challenge everything you've ever believed about Valentine's Day. I'm a 37-year-old clinical nutritionist from Seattle, Washington, and on the evening of February 12th, 2024, my life changed in ways I never expected. During my brief near-death experience, Jesus unveiled startling truths about Valentine's Day, an event that millions observe, yet many fail to understand. What he revealed to me was entirely different from the way we've come to view love, affection, and relationships, and it stood in stark contrast to what society has taught us. But before we dive in, please let me know where you're tuning in from. It would be wonderful to feel a connection, even if we are far apart. Also, don't forget to like and share your thoughts on this near-death experience testimony. Let's have an open, respectful conversation so we can learn from one another on this channel. Enjoy listening. I was hiking alone in the Olympic National Forest, cataloging rare medicinal plants for my research. The temperature had dropped quickly, and I didn't realize the severity of hypothermia until it was too late. The cold seeped into my body, freezing my movements and slowing my heartbeat. By the time rescuers found me, I had already crossed into the realm between life and death. The transition was unlike anything I could have imagined. There was no bright tunnel, no dramatic soundtrack, just a deep calm, a clarity that felt more real than any moment I had experienced in life. Then, he was there. Jesus Christ, radiating an overwhelming love that was almost impossible to fathom. "Rachel," he called, "I need to show you something vital about how my children are being misled." What followed was a profound spiritual revelation that would reshape everything I thought I knew about Valentine's Day. Jesus began by showing me visions of ancient Rome, not as a romantic historical scene, but as a raw, unfiltered spiritual landscape. I witnessed the pagan festival of Lupercalia unfold before my eyes. The disturbing rituals, the utter lack of respect for human dignity, the sexual immorality disguised as a religious observance. It was overpowering. "This is the real origin of what people now call Valentine's Day," Jesus explained. "A festival dedicated to fertility gods, rooted in practices that have nothing to do with genuine love." He showed me complex spiritual connections I had never understood. The god Nimrod, Pan, the Roman deities Venus and Cupid. Each symbol I had mindlessly accepted was actually part of a carefully constructed illusion, masking deeply troubling spiritual roots. "My children continue to engage in traditions that have no connection to me," Jesus said. "They celebrate a day thinking it's about love, when its origins are in something completely opposite to my teachings." The spiritual revelations were intense. Jesus guided me through the historical transformation, how the Roman Catholic Church carefully rebranded the pagan Lupercalia festival, giving it a Christian veneer. I saw how a day once filled with sexual lotteries, animal sacrifices, and fertility rites was repackaged into something seemingly innocent. "Look deeper," he told me. And suddenly, I could perceive the spiritual darkness behind the celebration, the commercialization, the pressure to conform, the shallow concept of love reduced to a single day of gift-giving. "True love is not about a single day," Jesus clarified. "True love is a daily commitment. True love is obeying my commandments. True love is serving others, not participating in traditions that honor anything other than me." The revelations were far-reaching. I learned about the specific pagan gods tied to the festival: Lucus, the god of fertility; Faunus, the connection to Romulus and Remus. Jesus showed me how these ancient rituals weren't just historical trivia, but ongoing spiritual deceptions. But the spiritual revelations about Valentine's Day were only beginning. Jesus then started to methodically deconstruct every facet of the holiday, exposing layers of spiritual deception that had been hidden for centuries. "Let me show you the true origins," he said. And suddenly, I was transported through time, witnessing the development of this seemingly innocent celebration. I saw the Roman festival of Lupercalia in vivid, horrifying detail. Young men dressed as priests, running through the streets of Rome, whipping women with hides from sacrificial animals. The women would line up, believing these cruel acts would grant them fertility. The sexual immorality, the total objectification of women, the raw pagan rituals. It was far from the romantic holiday people observe today. "This is where Valentine's Day truly began," Jesus explained. a fertility festival dedicated to Lucas, to Faunus, driven by the most basic human desires. He revealed intricate connections I had never grasped. Nimrod, the ancient ruler often linked to rebellion against God, was central to these celebrations. The god Pan, the horned deity of nature and sexuality, was directly associated with these rituals. Every symbol I had casually accepted, the red roses, the cherubic cupid, the entire romantic narrative, was part of a carefully crafted spiritual trap. Do you see now? This isn't about love, it's about spiritual deception, Jesus said. I learned about Saint Valentine himself, or more accurately, the absence of reliable historical information about him. Jesus explained how the Catholic Church had deliberately rebranded a pagan festival, giving it a Christian appearance. The various stories about Saint Valentine were just that, stories. There was no verified historical figure behind the holiday. My children have been misled, Jesus said. They celebrate a day thinking it's about love, when its origins are in something completely contrary to my teachings. The commercial side of the holiday became painfully clear. I saw visions of billions of dollars spent each year, marketing campaigns designed to manipulate emotions, and people feeling pressured to express their love through expensive gifts. The average American spends nearly $20 billion on just one day, a day rooted in pagan fertility rituals. Jesus' eyes were filled with sorrow as he pointed to a vision unfolding before me. I saw the familiar symbols of Valentine's Day, the cherubic cupid, the deep red roses, and the romantic rituals celebrated year after year. But as the scene changed, their true origins became apparent, and my heart sank with understanding. That is not an innocent child with wings, Jesus said. He is no angel of love. The image of Cupid flickered and shifted, revealing something much older, much darker. In ancient times, he was known as Eros, a god who did not inspire love as the world believed, but uncontrollable desire, infatuation that consumed without regard for consequences. His arrows didn't bring true devotion, but lust, a force that overtook reason and led people into temptation. The scene changed again, and a deep crimson filled my vision. Roses, rich and velvety, held by lovers throughout the centuries. They were a universal symbol of romance, but Jesus showed me their true origin. These were not meant to symbolize purity or devotion, he said. They were offerings to Venus, the goddess of sexual immorality, a symbol of passion separated from holiness. I watched as people, unaware of the weight these symbols carried, exchanged them in blind devotion to a tradition they had never questioned. The world had painted these things as beautiful, but beneath their surface, their origins told a different story. One of indulgence, one of deception. Then, I saw something even more disturbing. The earliest celebrations of this so-called Day of Love had nothing to do with honor, commitment, or sacrifice. At their core, they were rituals of chance, a lottery where names were drawn, not to form lasting bonds, but to assign partners for fleeting pleasure, strangers brought together by fate, their connection lasting only as long as the festival dictated. There was no true love here, only a reflection of the ancient chaos that had once defined Lupercalia. This is not how I defined love, Jesus stressed. Love is not about a single day. Love is not about commercialization. Love is about daily commitment, about keeping my commandments. He revealed biblical perspectives I had never fully grasped. Love, from God's viewpoint, was about obedience, about serving others, about maintaining spiritual integrity. The Apostle Paul's words resonated. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And in that moment, I understood. What the world had dressed up as romance, as affection, was a counterfeit, a carefully disguised shadow of something much older, much darker. Love was never meant to be left to chance, dictated by pagan rituals or bound to fleeting passion. Love, as Jesus had always intended, was something greater, something holy, and it was time to see the truth. Then Jesus began to reveal the 10 critical reasons why Christians should avoid celebrating Valentine's Day. Each reason a spiritual arrow piercing through centuries of cultural deception. First, he said, understand the spiritual warfare behind this holiday. He showed me visions of how paganism has subtly infiltrated modern Christianity, not through outright rebellion, but through quiet compromise. Lupercalia wasn't just an ancient festival. It was a spiritual template that continued to influence generations. The essence of the festival remained the same, a celebration of fertility, sexual immorality, and human desire, now masked as romantic love. The sexual immorality aspect was especially striking. Jesus showed how Valentine's Day fosters a spiritual atmosphere that encourages premarital sexual relationships. I saw statistics predicting unplanned pregnancies, emotional distress, and broken relationships, all stemming from a day that claims to honor love but actually encourages fleeting passion. Your society has turned love into a commodity, Jesus said. Love isn't something you buy on a particular day. It's a daily commitment, a spiritual practice. He guided me through biblical teachings, illustrating how God's definition of love differs profoundly from the world's. 1 Corinthians 13 became vivid. Love is patient, kind, and doesn't keep track of wrongdoings. Not love as a transactional exchange or a one-day display. The historical links grew even more complex. I learned about the Roman gods, Venus, Cupid, Juno, and how every symbol in today's Valentine's Day has roots in pagan worship. The red roses, Venus's sacred flower. Cupid, a symbol of sexual desire, not pure love. People think that changing the name alters its spiritual nature, Jesus said. But renaming a pagan ritual doesn't make it holy. He showed how the Roman Catholic Church strategically integrated pagan traditions, a process known as religious syncretism. Lupercalia wasn't abolished. It was rebranded. The love lottery turned into a saint name drawing. Sexual rituals became idealized courtship. The spiritual darkness remained, just hidden. My understanding of spiritual warfare grew. This wasn't just about a holiday. It was about maintaining spiritual purity, about being set apart as true followers of Christ. Many think they're harmlessly celebrating love, Jesus said, but they're actually partaking in a centuries-old spiritual deception. The economic aspect was equally eye-opening. Americans spend nearly $20 billion each year on Valentine's Day, a massive spiritual and financial commitment to a holiday with deeply troubling origins. Every dollar spent was, in a spiritual sense, a form of worship to ancient pagan beliefs. Jesus then showed me how Valentine's Day sets up a toxic cycle of emotional expectations and possible spiritual harm. Look deeper, he urged, at the psychological mechanisms behind this day. I saw the emotional dynamics it creates. Women feel unworthy if they don't get gifts. Men feel pressured to provide financially. The whole system was a masterwork of spiritual and emotional manipulation, a mechanism designed to produce feelings of inadequacy, comparison, and conditional love. This is not love, Jesus insisted. This is a manufactured emotional experience. He uncovered the deeper spiritual effects of these emotional patterns. The holiday fosters a performance-based idea of love that directly contradicts God's unconditional love. Every red rose, every heart-shaped chocolate is a transaction, an emotional exchange that has nothing to do with true spiritual connection. The biblical perspective became crystal clear. In Corinthians, love is described as patient, kind, and not keeping record of wrongs. Valentine's Day, on the other hand, fosters a mentality of keeping score. Who gave the best gift? Who received the most attention? Who showed love most dramatically? My children are being spiritually malnourished, Jesus said, by a system that turns the most sacred human emotion into a commodity. The insights into spiritual alternatives were equally powerful. Jesus showed me the 7 biblical festivals described in Leviticus 23, celebrations that truly reveal God's plan of salvation. These were meaningful spiritual events, not commercialized emotional performances. I saw how these festivals connected people to a broader spiritual story. Passover revealed redemption. Pentecost demonstrated spiritual empowerment. Each festival was a profound spiritual experience, unlike the shallow nature of Valentine's Day. The economic manipulation was even more apparent. Corporations had turned love into a multi-billion-dollar business. The average American spends almost $20 billion annually, not on genuine connections, but on temporary expressions of affection. Every purchased gift, Jesus explained, is a small act of spiritual compromise. The symbolic meanings were painfully clear. The whole holiday was a carefully constructed spiritual trap. Then Jesus showed me how traditions pass from generation to generation, carrying spiritual DNA that most people never see. Each celebration is a transmission, he explained, a spiritual inheritance few understand. I saw generational patterns of spiritual blindness. Parents unknowingly passing down traditions without questioning their origins. Children absorbing cultural practices like invisible spiritual algorithms, unaware of the deeper metaphysical consequences. The historical connections formed a complex tapestry of spiritual manipulation. From Nimrod to Pan, from Roman fertility rites to modern-day commercialized celebrations, Valentine's Day represented a continuous thread of spiritual deception. Changing the name doesn't change the spiritual essence, Jesus said. Renaming a pagan ritual doesn't purify its original intent. He revealed how spiritual forces operate through cultural traditions. Valentine's Day wasn't just a harmless celebration. It was a sophisticated spiritual mechanism created to distract people from true divine connection. The psychological warfare became undeniable. By focusing on a single day of performative love, the spiritual forces behind this holiday undermined the idea of consistent, unconditional love. People were taught to show love through material gifts rather than daily commitment and sacrifice. Love is not a product, Jesus said. Love is a daily spiritual discipline. I saw how the holiday created false emotional constructs. The pressure to perform, to meet societal expectations, to prove love through material displays. All of this was a spiritual trap designed to keep people focused on shallow expressions of connection. The biblical perspective stood in sharp contrast. In Scripture, love is described as patient, kind, and not keeping record of wrongs. Valentine's Day, by comparison, built a transactional model of love. Who gave the best gift? Who got the most attention? Who showed affection most dramatically? Jesus then revealed the spiritual ecosystem surrounding Valentine's Day, a complex web of cultural, economic, and spiritual forces that most people never notice. My spiritual vision expanded, revealing layers of interconnected spiritual dynamics. It wasn't just about one holiday, but about how humans consistently compromise their spiritual integrity through seemingly innocent cultural practices. Jesus emphasized the importance of understanding spiritual architecture. Cultural traditions aren't random. They're deliberate spiritual structures created to divert attention from true divine connection. Spiritual warfare, he explained, happens through subtle cultural mechanisms. People don't realize they're participating in systemic spiritual deception because these practices feel normalized. The revelations went beyond a historical critique. I saw how these traditions form spiritual ecosystems that promote disconnection, replacing genuine love with performative actions. Biblical love, in contrast, was revealed as a radical, transformative force. Not a commercial transaction, but a daily spiritual discipline of unconditional commitment, sacrifice, and real connection. Then Jesus led me through a more profound understanding of spiritual manipulation that went far beyond a single holiday. The insights were precise, dissecting cultural practices with divine clarity. Spiritual deception, he said, works through normalization. People accept traditions without ever questioning their core nature. I saw the deep ancestry of cultural practices. Valentine's Day wasn't an isolated event, but a complex spiritual device embedded in generations of human behavior. Every tradition carried spiritual compromise, passed quietly from one generation to the next. The economic architecture became a revealing case study. Corporations had skillfully transformed human emotion into a measurable commodity. Love became a market-driven experience, with billion-dollar industries shaping emotional landscapes through meticulously crafted marketing. Biblical views offered a radical alternative. Divine love wasn't a transactional experience, but a comprehensive spiritual discipline, requiring consistent commitment, radical transparency, and unconditional acceptance. Jesus revealed how spiritual principalities carefully craft cultural traditions. These aren't random occurrences, but well-planned strategies meant to distract humanity from authentic spiritual connection. Watch how cultural practices form spiritual ecosystems, he instructed, exposing unseen energetic networks that most humans never recognize. The symbolic language became clear. Each cultural artifact carried hidden spiritual meanings. Cupid symbolizing manipulative desire, red roses representing sexualized spirituality, gift-giving symbolizing emotional exchange. Jesus then showed how the holiday generates artificial emotional realities. Women feel unworthy if unacknowledged. Men feel pressured into performative displays of affection. The entire system is designed to trigger emotional vulnerability. Love can't be measured by commercial exchanges, he explained. Real connection transcends manufactured expectations. The stories of the saints are often misinterpreted. The historical Saint Valentine, a complex figure wrapped in legendary uncertainty. The Church's tendency to elevate human figures to semi-divine status contradicts fundamental spiritual principles of direct divine connection. Veneration of human intermediaries, Jesus warned, creates spiritual barriers rather than bridges. Biblical love was a radical model, unconditional, sacrificial, transformative, not a one-day performance, but a continual spiritual discipline of real human connection. Worshipping through recycled pagan traditions misaligns with divine intentions. Each celebration carries hidden spiritual DNA, a secret narrative of compromise and diversion. The most dangerous form of spiritual deception isn't open rebellion, but slow normalization. Valentine's Day represented a masterclass in subtle spiritual compromise. A holiday so deeply embedded in culture that its troubling origins are invisible. Jesus revealed the intricate mechanism of spiritual infiltration. Cultural traditions aren't random. They're planned strategies designed to distract people from true divine connection. Every heart-shaped decoration, every commercialized expression of love became a small ritual of spiritual misdirection. Normalization is the strongest tool of spiritual deception, he explained. When people accept something without questioning, they surrender their spiritual discernment. I saw how traditions pass through generations like hidden spiritual algorithms. Parents unknowingly transmit cultural practices, each repetition deepening layers of spiritual compromise. Children absorb these customs without realizing their metaphysical effects. The divine perspective transformed my view of culture. Each Valentine's Day celebration wasn't just one moment, but a complex transfer of spiritual energy, a continuation of ancient practices meant to sever humans from authentic divine love. Jesus revealed the profound spiritual festivals described in biblical texts, celebrations that genuinely connected people to God's narrative. These weren't commercial performances, but transformative spiritual experiences. Then Jesus showed me the deep meaning of the 7 biblical festivals, revealing them as a divine guide to spiritual interaction. Each festival revealed a deeper aspect of God's work in our lives. The journey began with Passover, symbolizing redemption and liberation, reminding us of God's power to free us from bondage. Unleavened bread followed, showing the need for spiritual purification, urging us to cleanse our hearts and embrace the new. Next was first fruits, a celebration of resurrection and new beginnings, offering hope for renewal and transformation. As we moved to Pentecost, I felt an overwhelming sense of spiritual empowerment, the Holy Spirit filling me with purpose and strength. The Festival of Trumpets resounded, calling me to action, urging me to listen closely to God's voice. On the Day of Atonement, I experienced profound spiritual reconciliation, understanding the importance of repentance and restoration with God. Finally, we arrived at Tabernacles, where I felt God's profound presence, a reminder of His divine dwelling within us. These festivals weren't just dates. They were living spiritual experiences, guiding me to a deeper connection with the divine. Each festival represented a profound spiritual journey, a sharp contrast to the shallow performance of Valentine's Day. As my spiritual experience concluded, Jesus' final message became perfectly clear. This isn't about condemning love, he said. It's about understanding love's true essence. Love, in its divine form, wasn't a commercial display. It wasn't a one-day ritual of romantic gestures. Love was a daily spiritual discipline, an ongoing commitment of unconditional acceptance, radical transparency, and sacrificial service. My children have been systematically deceived, Jesus said. They've replaced genuine spiritual connection with performative emotional exchanges. The revelation wasn't about condemnation, but an invitation, a call for spiritual awakening to recognize and transcend cultural conditioning. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital room. The hypothermia that nearly took my life became a distant memory compared to the profound spiritual revelation I had experienced. I knew my life's purpose had changed. I was no longer just a clinical nutritionist. I was a messenger, called to expose the spiritual workings behind cultural traditions that most people never question. The NDE testimony wasn't to instill fear, but to offer freedom, an invitation to see beyond surface-level practices and understand the deeper spiritual forces that shape human experience. Share what you've learned, Jesus' final words echoed in my mind, not as condemnation, but as revelation. For those willing to listen, a profound spiritual journey awaited, a chance to break free from generational spiritual limitations and embrace a truer, transformative understanding of divine love.